Did NECA Toys nail their first Hammer horror action figure, or is this Christopher Lee Dracula undead on arrival? Make like a bat and hang around. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Starting with the packaging, and I love a NECA Ultimate box. We've got our front flap with the movie poster, very colorful, name and logos on the spine. Much like Hammer itself, I appreciate how distinct it is from Universal, but just like Universal, we get a great collage on the back. NECA's figure photography is next level. We see more of that on the inside flap, and a window showing us everything we're getting. Another thing NECA does that I love is give credit to all their creators. Also, while I'm down here, if you're doing your vampire hunting in stores, here's the UPC. For packaging, Dracula gets 5 points. Moving on to presentation, and it's time to let Dracula out of his cardboard coffin. And just like Laura Palmer, he's wrapped in plastic. More than any version of Dracula, Christopher Lee feels incomplete without his cape, but it does get in the way of presentation, so I'm going to be leaving it off for this section. First things first, and Dracula stands at just under 7.5 inches, or just under 19 centimeters. This makes sense, as in life, Christopher Lee stood at a very intimidating 6 foot 5 inches. Compared to Bela Lugosi's iconic tux, Christopher Lee's Dracula opted for a simple black suit. This makes sense, as Bela's Dracula focused on the character more as a seductive social climber. Christopher, by contrast, doesn't utter a single line after the first 10 minutes of the movie, which, given his commanding voice, is a real shame. The suit itself is fine. NECA's given it some very lifelike wrinkles, and I love that little touch of metallic purple for the satin, as well as that very hard-to-see red pin. It's the kind of small detail that could have been omitted, and most people wouldn't have known. His hands are sufficiently sinewed, and of course he has his ring, that ring being the last shot of the film, and if you look closely, there's even a touch of silver for the shirt button. That's the kind of detail I expect from NECA. I do like the glossy paint that they used for his loafers, and they really packed in the stitching and wrinkle detail. When I picture Christopher Lee's Dracula, what comes to mind is a head and a cape. This is always going to be the Halloween decoration mental image people have of Dracula, and this is always going to give people nightmares, but realistically, this is a scary guy I do not want to meet down an alley. As I've said before, NECA's track record with normal human faces is kind of spotty, but this is one of their best. Lee described his interpretation as the loneliness of evil. He doesn't enjoy what he does, he just does it to continue to exist. Somehow NECA really captured that cold, indifferent intensity. Even small things like the 5 o'clock shadow really sell it. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the cape. The collar and fastener is a sculpted piece that blends perfectly with the suit, but the fabric itself is good and heavy, and as usual, NECA's given us a lot of it. As such, it hangs very naturally. Just look at those lifelike folds. If there was any doubt for presentation, I'm giving Dracula 5 points. Moving on to poseability, and once again, we're going to have to ditch the cape if we want to see just what this Dracula can do. To put the cape on and off, by the way, you need to simply remove the head and slide it over the neck. While we're here, we can see Dracula's head is on a dumbbell joint. Additionally, there's some extra swivel at the base of the neck. Between the hair and the high collar, he can only look up this high, but thanks to that extra ball joint, he can look down this far. He also gets a surprising amount of tilt, and of course side to side. Moving down, Dracula can raise his arm 90 degrees, and wait a minute, if he makes a cross shape, does that mean he's afraid of himself? Oh, right, no reflection. Moving down the arm, he doesn't have any bicep swivel or anything like that, but he does have single-jointed swivel elbows. I know this is going to bother a lot of people, but for a realistic design, I'm okay with it, and while I can't speak for you, this is a deep enough bend for me. And then moving all the way down the arm, his wrists can swivel and hinge either up or down. Moving to the middle, and I'm pretty sure that all Dracula has in there is a ball joint, and looking at this jacket overlay, I think we know better than to expect a whole lot out of this. He can only arch back this far, which is non-existent, but he can hunch forward this far, which admittedly is a little bit better than I expected. Not much in the way of tilt, but he does get that Transylvania twist. Moving on down, and Dracula has ball-jointed hips. I'm very pleasantly surprised to see he has a near 90-degree kick, as well as a really great split held back only by the jacket. Had they put slits on the side, you'd probably get even better. Also, those hip balls get a really great amount of twist. He does only have single-jointed swivel knee, but the bend is better than 90 degrees. And then moving all the way down, there is actually a ball in the ankle that allows for swivel, but he does get a small amount of hinge. That's been limited by the pant cuff. And like Christopher Lee vowing to never play Dracula again, only to cave in time and time again when people's jobs are threatened, pivot. Yeah, that's true by the way. After the first couple of movies, he got really sick of doing the part, but because the studio threatened to fire people, he kept on doing it so people didn't lose their jobs. Truly, Dracula was the hero all along. Articulation might not be this figure's strongest suit, but Dracula has it where it counts. For Poseability, I'm giving Dracula 3 points. Moving on to Playability, and looking at some of the accessories, you can see that NECA was really struggling to find something to give this guy. He does have this shovel from the scene when he's burying Mina. Very fine, worn out texture, and the paint wash really brings it to life. This is just a plain good accessory to have. They also gave Dracula not 1, but 2 candlesticks. This comes from his final showdown with Van Helsing. Pretty much Dracula grabs a candle and throws it at him, so this candle is just the other candle mid-flight. I get that Dracula didn't really interact with a whole lot of other props in the movie, so I guess I have to give props to NECA. NECA could have given him Jonathan Harker's suitcase to carry, but that would have just looked like Dracula was going on vacation, and we all remember how that turned out. No, where this figure excels is in its alternate hands and heads. So far, we've been looking at these more menacing hands. He also has this pointing hand that says, "Not one more word out of you, mister." He also has a pair of accessory holding hands. That way he can hold the shovel, double fist the candlesticks, or be a little kitty cat on TikTok. That said, if you have the Bela Lugosi accessory set, Christopher comfortably fits in that coffin. The best part of this figure is the head, and lucky for us, there are 2 more where it came from. First up, and here he is, having freshly bitten a victim. Notice the slight redness to the eyes and the lifelike blood. It's another very solid likeness, but does kind of remind me of Nicolas Cage's Dracula from Renfield. The real showstopper is this head. This look has got to be the money shot from the movie. You've got the red eyes, the bared fangs, the tasseled hair. While not the first vampire depicted on film with those long incisor-style fangs, Christopher Lee was the first Dracula. He was also the first movie Dracula to capitalize on color. It might be quaint by today's standards, but at the time it was a big deal. But Playability is more than just accessories or horror movie history. It's also about how well your figure plays with others. Starting with a few other fanged fellows of film, and here's Nosferatu. Though he's named Count Orlok in the movie, it's technically the story of Dracula, they just didn't have the rights. And then of course here we have Bela Lugosi. Lining them up chronologically, and I really hope that NECA can someday give us Gary Oldman. For a few other creatures of the night in my collection though, and here's the DC vs. Vampire Superman, DC vs. Vampires Joker, and the DC vs. Vampires Green Lantern. For the closest thing in my collection to a 6-inch Dracula right now, and here's the Marvel Legends Morlun. But hey, it's always Morbin time somewhere. That said, and for my only Van Helsing, and here's Splinter from NECA's Ninja Turtle Universal crossover. Luckily, the Peter Cushing Van Helsing is on the way, but hopefully at some point we can get a figure of this guy. In the meantime, for my only 7-inch scale Vampire Hunter, here we have the Marvel Select Blade. For a relative scale comparison, here's Dracula with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. When it comes to accessories, NECA buries the competition, and with Peter Cushing's Van Helsing already revealed, this is a line we can really sink our teeth into. For Playability, I'm giving Dracula 5 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. As a NECA Ultimate, Dracula's gonna set you back about 36 bucks. I've been waiting years for a Christopher Lee Dracula, and this checks all my boxes. Between the high quality of the figure and the quality accessories, this is one vampire worth inviting into your home. For price, I'm giving Dracula 5 points, averaging out to a fantastic total of 4.6 out of 5. For more 5 POA Ween videos, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice, have fun, and be spooky.